When you look at an aircraft altimeter, you might assume it is calculating the geometric distance between you and the ground. It does not. An altimeter is essentially a scale. It measures the physical weight of the fluid column resting directly on top of it. The atmosphere is a finite physical envelope of compressible gas surrounding the planet. It is made of matter, and therefore it possesses real mass. In physics, pressure is defined simply as the amount of force applied over a specific unit of area. For aviation and meteorology, the standard unit of measurement is the hectopascal. 1 hectopascal is equivalent to 100 pascals, or exactly 1 millibar. The total mass of this gaseous envelope is staggering, roughly 5.15 times 10 to the 18th power kilograms. Earth's gravity pulls this immense mass downward, creating a continuous, heavy force on everything below it. Because the atmosphere is a fluid, its particles are in random, constant Brownian motion. As they continuously collide with each other and any surface in their path, they exert force equally in all directions, downward, upward, and sideways. Right now, you are bearing a load of 6.6 kilograms of atmospheric weight on every square inch of your body. We survive this immense continuous compression only because our internal bodily pressure pushes outward with an equal balancing force. Understanding the atmosphere as a heavy, active, and compressible fluid is the required first step to accurately predicting global weather patterns and ensuring safe vertical separation between aircraft. To calculate deviations, we first establish the baseline. Under international standard atmosphere conditions, mean sea level pressure is exactly 1,013.25 hectopascals, which translates to 29.92 inches of mercury, or 760 millimeters of mercury. Looking at this vertical cross-section, mass distribution is extremely bottom-heavy. 3/4 of atmospheric mass is trapped below the 11-kilometer tropopause. Tracking higher, particle density thins completely. By 100 kilometers, atmospheric pressure drops to absolute zero. This ambient continuous force exerted by the resting molecules around us is known as static pressure or barometric pressure. It is always present regardless of whether an object is moving or stationary. When an object moves through that fluid, or the fluid moves past the object as wind, it generates dynamic pressure. This is an additional, purely kinetic force acting in the exact opposite direction of the vector of travel. By mechanically isolating the constant static pressure from the directional dynamic pressure, an aircraft's pedostatic system can calculate exact airspeed and altitude. This graph charts altitude against pressure. Because air is highly compressible, the pressure lapse rate is not linear. It draws an exponential decay curve, dropping off aggressively near the surface, where the air is dense, and tapering slowly at higher altitudes. There are 2 specific benchmarks required for the DGCA syllabus shown here. First, at 10,000 feet, pressure decays to roughly 700 hectopascals. Second, by 6 kilometers, or roughly 20,000 feet, the pressure is exactly half of the sea level value. To calculate the exact height change required to drop 1 hectopascal, we use a specific formula, 96 multiplied by the atmospheric temperature in Kelvin divided by the pressure in hectopascals. Apply that formula at different altitudes, and the nonlinear reality becomes clear. Near sea level, you must climb about 30 feet to lose 1 hectopascal. At 20,000 feet, you have to climb 50 feet to lose that same hectopascal. And at 40,000 feet, it takes a full 100 feet of climbing to register a 1 hectopascal drop. Calculating true altitude requires continuous mechanical adjustment. A single hectopascal of pressure change represents vastly different physical distances depending entirely on your starting altitude. Gay-Lussac's law dictates the relationship between temperature and pressure. When an air mass cools, it compresses, pulling the molecules closer together and increasing density. When an air mass warms, it expands, pushing those molecules further apart. This split-screen visual demonstrates the operational danger. On the left, the cold air is densely packed near the surface, causing pressure to drop off rapidly as you climb. On the right, the warm air is expanded. At this fixed geometric altitude, the expanded warm column exerts significantly more pressure than the cold column. This drives a critical DGCA altimeter rule. When flying from a high temperature or high pressure area into a low temperature or low pressure area, the rapid drop in ambient pressure causes your altimeter to overread. Your aircraft is dangerously lower than the instrument indicates. Conversely, when flying from a low temperature or low pressure zone into a high temperature or high pressure zone, the retained pressure aloft causes the altimeter to underread.
You are physically higher than indicated. To solve for these variations on an exam, use two formulas. Alticore is the indicated altitude minus the true altitude. The D value is the true altitude minus the indicated altitude. An altimeter only reads pressure. It is entirely blind to temperature. Failing to account for thermal compression means flying blind to your actual terrain clearance. To measure these pressure changes, meteorologists traditionally used a mercury barometer. Atmospheric weight pushes down on a fluid reservoir, forcing mercury up the vacuum tube. It is highly accurate, but heavy, fragile, and impossible to install on an aircraft. The aneroid barometer solved this. Instead of fluid, it measures the expansion and contraction of a sealed internal vacuum diaphragm, operating strictly through mechanical linkages. When connected to a recording drum, it becomes a barograph. Meteorologists use this tracing action to map pressure tendency over time. An aircraft altimeter is simply a highly refined aneroid barometer that translates pressure data directly into feet. But to read correctly, you must give the instrument a baseline starting point, a datum, entered manually into the Colesman window. These datums are defined by standard Q codes. QFE sets the datum to the local field elevation. On the tarmac, your altimeter reads 0. But because it ignores sea level entirely, it provides zero information on surrounding terrain clearance, making it rarely used en route. QNH sets the datum to mean sea level, calculating the local barometric pressure downward using standard ISA lapse rates. This ensures that your indicated altitude aligns precisely with the MSL-based obstruction markers on your charts. QFF also calculates sea level pressure, but it uses the actual current atmospheric conditions, ignoring the standardized ISA models. Because of this, QFF is strictly a tool for meteorological forecasting. Pilots never fly on QFF. Below the transition altitude, aircraft fly on QNH to ensure precise terrain clearance. Once climbing past the transition level, all pilots switch to QNE, the standard pressure setting of 1013.25 hectopascals, to fly predefined flight levels. By synchronizing everyone to QNE aloft, Q codes provide a universal translation layer. They ensure all aircraft share a mathematically identical vertical reality, regardless of the localized weather systems moving beneath them. Pressure follows a predictable diurnal variation. This 24-hour cycle graph shows how solar heating and cooling drives pressure to hit maximums at 10 and 22 o'clock local time, and minimums at 4 and 16 o'clock, fluctuating by 1 to 3 hectopascals daily. To map these variations geographically, meteorologists use synoptic charts. The primary feature of these charts are isobars, lines connecting geographic areas that share the exact same QFF pressure. They also plot isolalabars, which connect areas experiencing the exact same rate of pressure change. On these charts, there is a rigid physical rule. Isobars will always dip toward a colder air mass. When pressure differs between adjacent zones, fluid moves to correct the imbalance, creating the pressure gradient force. The atmosphere accelerates perpendicularly across isobars from high to low. Tightly packed isobars dictate a steeper gradient, translating immediately into high wind velocities. By analyzing the horizontal pressure gradient on a synoptic chart, a pilot can accurately predict wind velocities and directions long before entering the airspace. In the northern hemisphere, a low creates anti-clockwise inward wind convergence, forcing a massive vertical updraft causing bad weather. Conversely, a high operates in reverse. Essential downdraft hits the surface, diverging outward clockwise. This sinking air creates fair weather, but traps haze, reducing visibility. From these primary systems, extensions form. A trough is a V-shaped extension bleeding off a low-pressure center, bringing abrupt wind shifts and severe weather. A ridge is a U-shaped extension off a high, maintaining clear skies and fair conditions. Finally, the col. This is the stagnant, neutral intersection caught between two highs and two lows. The conflicting pressure gradients cancel each other out,
resulting in light, highly variable, and unpredictable winds. The weight of the atmospheric column dictates every weather system on the synoptic chart. Look at this aircraft in steady flight. The instruments in the cockpit indicate it is flying perfectly level. But atmospheric pressure is not a flat grid. The layers of air pressure beneath the plane are constantly morphing, swelling, and dipping. To maintain a constant indicated altitude, the physical aircraft is actually tracking an invisible undulating wave of pressure, bringing it dangerously close to the water below. Without precise manual calibration, the altimeter is entirely blind to these shifts. It is a static mechanical dial trying to make sense of a highly dynamic fluid environment. Operating safely requires translating that fluid environment into strict math. Mastering DGCA Meteorology means understanding the rigid numerical relationships between local Q codes, vertical transition layers, and the macro synoptic weather patterns driving the pressure changes. To master the DGCA aviation syllabus and prepare for your exams with clear, concept-driven lessons, subscribe to Pilot Arnav's YouTube channel. Ultimately, trusting an uncalibrated instrument in a shifting atmosphere transforms a standard flight path into a fatal trajectory. To correct the altimeter's errors, we first have to define the exact spatial boundaries where these pressure calculations occur in the lower atmosphere. Our absolute baseline is mean sea level, averaging high and low tides. Altitude measures strictly from this MSL. Height measures from a specific surface datum, like a mountain. Higher up, the airspace trapped between the transition altitude and transition level forms the transition layer. These strict spatial boundaries isolate aircraft mapping local terrain at the bottom from those cruising on standardized pressure planes at the top. The aircraft altimeter uses mechanical inputs called Q codes to recognize which of these specific reference planes the pilot wants to measure from. QNH reduces pressure to mean sea level, outputting aerodrome elevation on the ground or altitude in the air. Dialing QNE inputs standard 1013.25 hectopascals, outputting flight level above the transition layer. QFE measures localized pressure at the aerodrome datum, zeroing out on the runway. QFF is pressure reduced to mean sea level based on actual current environmental conditions, not idealized models. Pilots rarely fly on QFF. Meteorologists strictly use it for plotting synoptic weather charts. The operational procedure is rigid. Climbing through the transition layer, pilots swap from local QNH to standard QNE. Descending back through the transition layer, they revert from QNE to the destination's QNH. Failing to execute exact Q code swaps means the altimeter measures from a plane that no longer matches the environment, blinding the pilot to approaching terrain. This layout highlights the core metric driving DGCA pressure mathematics. For every 1 hectopascal of pressure change, there is exactly 30 feet of vertical displacement. If surface QFE is 950 hectopascals and MSL QNH is 1000, the 50 hectopascal difference multiplied by 30 gives a 1,500-foot elevation. Now compare standard QNE 1013.25 to the 950 QFE. The 63.25 difference multiplied by 30 yields 1,897.5 feet. The output of that calculation establishes a fixed rule. Whenever standard QNE is greater than local QNH, the actual mean sea level is situated physically lower than the standard sea level.
The inverse is true. If you have a high local QNH of 1023 compared against the 950 QFE, QNH is now greater than standard QNE. This proves the actual mean sea level is situated physically higher than the standard. Actual air temperature modifies these readings. Hotter environmental temperatures cause the air column to expand, yielding lower QFE. Colder temperatures condense the air mass, yielding a higher QFE relative to QNH. These calculations provide the exact math used to predict when an aircraft will stray from its assigned vector. An aircraft departs Aerodrome 1, a low 900 hectopascal zone, flying toward a high 1100 hectopascal zone without resetting QNH. The indicated altitude remains visually locked at 10,000 feet, but mathematically, the 200 hectopascal difference forces the true physical altitude to plummet to 6,000 feet. This generates the first DGCA logic rule: low, high, low.
Flying from a low-pressure zone to a high-pressure zone ensures your indicated altitude reads lower than your true altitude. The inverse rule is high-low-high. Flying from a high-pressure zone into a low-pressure zone guarantees the indicated altitude is higher than the true altitude. The instrument tells you are safe, but you are physically lower than you think. Temperature acts as a proxy for pressure here. Flying from warm air into cold air functions like high-low-high, resulting in a dangerously high reading. Flying cold to warm reads low. Failing to manually counteract the high-low-high paradox is the primary cause of controlled flight into terrain in adverse weather. To anticipate these dangerous pressure gradients before stepping into the cockpit, we have to look at the macro weather systems generating them. A cyclone, or low, features tightly closed isobars driving high-speed winds. Converging air swirls counterclockwise, known as backing, and forces air upward, creating bad weather. When that low stretches into a sharp V shape, it becomes a trough, forcing abrupt wind shifts along its lower pressure axis. An anticyclone, or high, swirls clockwise and diverges outward, known as veering. Air subsides downward, trapping particles for poor visibility but fair weather. A U-shaped extension of a high is a ridge. A static intersection between two highs and two lows creates a col. Every macro weather shape on the synoptic chart dictates the exact micro-pressure gradients that pilots must continuously calculate in the cockpit. Look at the complete causal chain. Massive cyclones and anticyclones warp the atmospheric layers. That warping triggers the altimeter paradox in the cockpit, which demands an immediate, precise Q-code correction. Transitioning perfectly through the layers using QNH and QNE is the only mathematical shield against terrain collision.
Memorizing these specific derivations, from lapse rates to synoptic shapes, is non-negotiable for passing DGCA examinations and operating safely under IFR. To master the rest of the DGCA syllabus and systematically decode the math behind aviation, hit subscribe on Pilot Arnav's YouTube channel. Every altitude reading is a continuous mathematical negotiation with the weight and movement of the atmosphere.